Okay, in order to help us learn how to use a lot of the simple and beginning functions in Microsoft Word, as well as move into the really advanced features in Microsoft Word, what we're going to do is we're going to begin by working with an ebook. And the best way to do that is to come to Gutenberg.org. Gutenberg.org. Gutenberg is probably the best place to get public domain books. These are books that most of the books in Gutenberg are in the public domain, which means that they are no longer covered by a copyright. You can use the book, you can modify the book, you can do all kinds of things with it because it's no longer covered by a copyright. So what we want to do is to come into Gutenberg here, and we're going to work with a book by Charles Dickens that was written in 1843. So that's way back before we have to worry about copyrights here. And the book was called A Christmas Carol. So we'll just type that in here in the search field in Gutenberg, hit enter. And we're going to just take this very first one and click it. And come down to where it says plaintext.utf-8. Plaintext UTF-8. We're going to click on that, and what you'll see is the entire book open up in one web page. If you were to scroll way down, you'd read the entire book. You can see that the lines are very short. We're going to have to fix that. But the first thing we need to do is to get this out of a web browser, and we need to put it into a plain text document. And we're going to do that by using Control A. Control A will select the entire page, and then we're going to use Control C to copy all of that. And then we're going to open up Microsoft Notepad. Notepad is a free text editor that comes with all Microsoft Office software. And here in Notepad, we're just going to click and then paste using Control V. I've just placed that entire book into a plain text file. I'm going to hit Control Home to jump to the very top of that document. And we're going to save this. So by clicking File, and then Save As. And then I'm just going to put it here in my Documents folder as A Christmas Carol. But I'm going to call this file Raw Text. And the reason I do this is going to be our resource. If we mess up everything, we can come back to this file and just start all over again. So give yourself a way to create the file so that you can come back to it. So save this. Then we can close the text editor. We can close our browser. And then we will open Microsoft Word. And in Word, we'll simply start with a blank document. And in this blank document, we want to bring in the text from that plain text file that we just created. To do that, I'm going to click on Insert and come over to the text group. And in the text group, I'm going to select Object and then come down to Text from File. We're going to get the Insert File dialog box, and I'm going to click on Documents, and you'll see that in Documents right now, it's not showing me that text file that I created, but it's because the Insert File dialog box and the Open File dialog box, and maybe some of the others, down here just above where it says Insert, there is a filter. And right now the filter is set to show only Word documents. So I'm going to click the little drop down here. I'm just going to select all files. And then now we can see that text document, A Christmas Carol, raw text. insert, and we're going to bring it in with the setting here for other encoding, and notice over here it will say UTF-8, and that's what we have. We want to click OK, and that whole document comes in here, and we'll just use Control Home to get to the top again. We're going to do the very first thing is to save this file. So I'm going to click File and Save As. I'm going to come and put this in my Documents folder. I'm going to save this in my Documents folder as a Christmas Carol, but not as raw text now. This is going to be my working file. So I'm going to save it as a Word document and click Save. This way, when I go back to my Documents folder, then I can see here that I have my original, A Christmas Carol, the raw text file, and I have the A Christmas Carol as my Word document. So I'll close the Documents box there. Now, we've got the file in Microsoft Word, and we are ready to begin editing this file. I do want to give you some tips as we start working with this text file. One of the tips that you need to learn, first of all, is about the use of Control Home and Control End. If I press and hold down the Control key and then tap on the End key, so it's Control End, then it jumps to the bottom of the document. If I press Control Home, it jumps to the top of the document. Now I can tell it's at the top of the document because I see the vertical slashing insertion point right here at the beginning of the document. So if I click somewhere in this line and click Control Home, you can see that the insertion point jumps to the beginning of the line right before the capital T in the word the. So if I hit Control End to go to the end of the document, then now we're at the end of the document. And notice that we are at the end of the document where Microsoft Word says the end of the document is. Now you might have thought that perhaps the end of the document was here somewhere around the period after ebooks. Maybe that's the actual end of the document. But when I press Control End, Microsoft Word is telling me that no, the end of that file is actually that line right there below it. So if I hit 2 or 3 more Enter keys and Control S to save that, and then I'm going to jump back up to the top of the document, see the insertion point at the top, then Control End, back to the bottom of the document, you can see that now the computer is saying, no, this is where the document ends because somebody put in some extra Enter keys. And that's what I want to show you right now. The best way to tell when you have any doubts about what accounts for these blank spaces in here is just come up and click on the Home tab and click on what's called the Show Hide button. So you'll click on Show Hide, and what it does is that it opens what we call the non-printing characters that are in this document. For example, down here at the very bottom, where I hit the Enter key 3 times, you can see that there is a paragraph that is entered here for each one of those. And the reason Microsoft Word was coming to this line right here at the end of the last sentence was because that's where the last Enter key had been entered. Up here you see some crazy things. Those look like dots across the screen. Those represent the space bar. So if I come down to this last paragraph symbol and I start hitting the space bar, you can see that it's giving me little dots across the screen. Those are not periods like occur at the end of a sentence. We can see the periods in the sentences just fine. These are dots that appear in the middle of the line where the text is found, and they represent the space bar. So right here you can see between most and people that there is one space that has been entered there. Just one space. If I come up to this second to the top line up here, I can see that after that period that somebody entered 2 blank spaces. So this is what we're seeing here so far are just the blank spaces represented by these dots, and then these backwards looking P symbols. These are the symbols for the enter key having been hit. And in Microsoft Word, every time you hit the enter key, you're creating basically a new paragraph. Now there's one other type of key that will show up in here for us, and that's if I press on the tab key. Every time I hit the tab key, you will see a little arrow pop up on your screen. And so this is the show hide button is Microsoft Word's way of helping you to see where some of the non-printing keys. If I printed this document, then it would all print all the way down through the last word, but you would not see any of these characters. You'd see just the words and periods and punctuation that normally come with the text. If I were to print the document, I'll turn off the show hide here, then what I would see printed out on paper is just all of this. I would see the book, but none of the non-printing characters. So again, I'm going to jump back to the top of the page, and I'm going to show you one other use of the home and end keys. We looked at Control Home and Control End. They take you to the top and bottom of the entire document. And now I'm going to just use the Home and End key without holding down any other key. If I just tap on End, notice that the insertion point jumps to the end of the current line. And if I press on the Home key, it jumps to the start of that line. And if the line were short, like this one here, where it says Language English, then if I press End, then it jumps to the end of the line. If I press Home, it jumps to the start of that line. Here is a place where there's just one word on the line with the word preface down here. And if I click in the line and press End, it jumps to the end. Press Home, it jumps to the beginning. Now this is a very important skill, computer skill to learn, because you can use this skill in almost everything you do on your computer. Even on websites, when you're trying to type something into the address field to go to some website, you can press you can press Home and End and go to the end of that web address or go to the beginning of that web address. When you're working in Microsoft Excel and you're working in the formula bar, you can press End to jump to the end of a formula. You can also press Home and it will jump you over to the start of the formula. So this gets us started with Microsoft Word and a book that we've imported into this book. And in our next video, we'll start actually editing the content of what we've downloaded.